Weekday mornings at 8 a.m. This is the new Spirit FM Music.
Hey, this is Eric Purdick. You're welcome. We welcome you, new audience, to our Debunked radio show. It's called Hope Talks, and we're here live in the studio with Carl Kirby, founder and president of Reasons for Hope. Carl?
Hey, welcome everybody. Glad to be with you.
We are also here with Juan Valdez, and as far as the title, I know you're a pastor. You have a pastor in church. What's the name of your church in Miami, Juan?
Centro Evangélico. It's a Spanish church.
Say it again.
Centro Evangélico.
And we also have Bill Schott. Bill Schott was on a previous program. Bill Schott is the pastor, the CCA pastor, Calvary Christian Academy, and also head of the Bible department, and recent graduate from traveling on his first Israel trip. Bill?
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Highly recommend it to everybody. If you want to know what it's like to actually step into the Bible and experience the realities of Scripture, go to Israel.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Now, here's the cool thing is Carl Kirby and Reasons for Hope Ministry really, and we're going to talk about tonight's theme is our first show. The introduction is we're going to jump heavily into Debunked. Debunked is a segment of Reasons for Hope. It's part of what we do, one of the tools in the ministry, but it's really, we're giving a lot of focus, we're giving a lot of play, and you're going to hear a lot more about it. But I'm really grateful that Bill's here because Bill works with kids on a daily basis. He's a teacher, high school. Juan, you still teach at the high school?
I do not.
And what school did you teach there in
I taught
Miami?
for 14 years at Florida Christian School.
14 years. So you guys, now watch this. Carl, his repertoire, his reputation is really going to doing father-son conferences, youth conferences all over the United States, and interacting with youth is a huge part of the focus of this ministry of this man's heart, and that's what we're doing. So tonight I want to start off with Carl. We're going to talk about Debunked, and we want to talk about the Debunked story, but first we want to talk about a little bit of Already Gone. That's a kind of a documentary you worked on in a ministry that you worked at for 18 years. And why don't you tell us about Already Gone, and then how does that transition into what God showed you about doing Debunked?
Well, a dear friend of mine funded the research behind it. Brett Beamer did the research on it, and they were trying to find out when and why this younger generation was walking away from their faith. Because to me, if you don't know when and why, you can never come up with a how on how to deal with it. And so their research showed very clearly that the when, 87 to 88% identified elementary, middle, and high school as when they were starting to doubt their faith. Most folks, including me, before the research was done, would have told you that it was college when they started to walk away. But reality was they had already started to walk away in elementary, middle, high school. And so they were still in church because that was their social thing, or that's what they were required to do. But they had mentally checked out. And so to me, that just struck me in that we're putting a lot of emphasis on the older generation. I see a lot of that going on. But once you get down to that younger generation, there's not a whole lot really of teaching them about their faith, why they need to trust it, and why it's so important to know what they believe about what they say they believe. And in my heart, I believe that is a part of the reason why they're walking away. They don't really know what they're walking away from. We're not losing them. We just honestly never had them. They had something that they were heard or been around, but they had never fully bought it themselves. And so that was kind of a catalyst when you see that you're losing at this generation. Well, what do? You're not going to go after them and reach them the way that we can reach somebody in their 20s. They just think different. I mean, the research shows that they've got 2.2 second attention span, which is less than a goldfish. So if you get up and say, today, they're done. You know, you're not going to get the third word, and they're gone. So the approach became, well, I'm already ADD, so let's just take advantage of this ADD mindset and go with it, man, and just run. Take on a topic, be straightforward, and hit it hard. And it was a dream, and that's where initially that's the kernel for where Debunked came from.
And I want to interrupt 1 second here. So we had Josh McDowell in over at Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale. This was about 7 or 8 years ago, and I remember him saying I was in the back with him and the pastor before he went on, and he said, hey, you know what? I've dedicated the next 10 years just to reaching out after the youth. And I was sitting there. I was running the apologetics school, and I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, you knucklehead, what are you doing? You can't just abandon these people in the church. You're spending all your time with the youth. And he said, if you get them while they're young, look, think how much headache you're saving and heartache and people and the people they influence. And it was really a very smart thing he did. And I was blown away by his vision after the fact.
Well, what hit me is, I mean, I'm tired of going after 20-year-olds who have already walked away from what they think they know Christianity is, or a whole lot more difficult to reach. because been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and it didn't get me anything. So if you can reach them at that elementary, middle, and high school age before they walk away, oh my goodness, man. I mean, it just makes sense. That's where you need to put the emphasis. And so that's what we did.
Juan, tell us your experience now with youth. And actually, let's do this. I'm looking at the clock here. Let's keep the debunked story for the next segment.
Sure.
But why don't we talk about the need first? And Juan, if you would go, tell us what your experience has been. You taught high school. You teach all over the world. Talk to us.
Well, my experience is very real in the sense that there isn't a place we go to that I won't have a parent come up to me and say, "Hey, how can you help me with my son or my daughter?" I have a son or a daughter that has walked away from the Lord. They grew up in church. They believed what we believed, and they're a good kid. And all of a sudden, they're gone. All of a sudden, they're not there. They're just they would tell me now they're an atheist after their first semester in college, or all of a sudden they come home from high school and they're not sure that Christianity is the right religion. Like how do we deal with that? Please help me. These parents are desperate. We get emails in our ministry from parents that just have this struggle. We have, it breaks my heart. As a father, it's got to be our worst nightmare that we raise a child in the fear of the Lord, and then as they grow older, we lose them. And that's been my experience.
Pastor Bill?
Yeah, I teach juniors and seniors at Calvary Christian Academy in Fort Lauderdale, and I teach them apologetics, and I dedicate segments of each and every class to Q&A sessions, which are just simply, you tell me what's making you hesitate in your faith. You tell me what the big obstacles are, and we'll discuss those. And a lot of it, I think ties into how we teach youth groups. And how we teach youth groups is with this mindset of how do we get more kids in. But when you're targeting messages and making it attractive so more kids come, you're not teaching the Bible. What I find is when I actually teach the words of Scripture, now the kids' hearts are getting engaged. Instead of trying to make everything about a football game or everything about something outside of the Bible has a power in it that I don't have and Carl and Juan don't have. The Bible has a power in it that's ordained by God to reach hearts. And I think we're scared to use it on our youth a lot. So we do songs and dances, and we do a lot of different things. But that's why I like the Debunked ministry, because it actually goes directly towards the things that are making kids struggle, whether it be evolution or society or anything like that. It deals directly with it that I think appeals to the heart of the youth.
And Bill, I want to jump into that is because what we have seen is that when we take and go to these camps and speak with the younger generation, and the way that we're doing it is we hand out index cards day one, especially when you get a multiple day event. Index cards. What are the questions that are keeping you from selling out? That's what we're dealing with. That's it. You bring it, because when we get done, we want you to know what you're walking away from, and quite frankly, what you're walking to. And when you know that, Christianity has got so much solid evidence to support it, and the other side really doesn't. But most of the kids have never been taught how to deal with that stuff. So I'm praising God that you're teaching apologetics, that you're pointing to this younger generation. Now let's go and let's get the parents to do this, because the parents need to become the heroes to their children.
Yeah, so I want to read you something. This is kind of neat. So about 5 years ago, in a week, Carl was the first time Bill and I met Carl over at Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale. He was doing a creation conference, and the comments, I took quotes down from our Bible department head, Bill Schott, and our science department head, Laura Quinn, and here's some of the quotes they had. Bill said, our kids need to hear all. He really was emphasizing all of these sessions. Our teachers need to hear all of these sessions, because he was blown away the way that you can take the science and the logic and the philosophy and everything in the history and bring it all together and articulate it to kids and go, wait a second, all this stuff that makes sense. The Christian worldview makes total sense. It's very livable. It's very, it conforms to reality, the real world we live in. And then the second one is Laura Quinn, and she was, here's a quote she said. She says, wow, this is balance. This is popular level, scientific level. Students would say things like, I don't have to be ashamed about the science world, how it works with Christianity and the Bible. She says, I want it for CCA. I want it for all Christian schools. I mean, the impact is, when you find people that can that have taken in the time, like you said, we're going to hear your story in a second, Carl. Maybe one of the upcoming segments. You don't have to be a PhD scientist. Now we have a PhD in here. We got a couple. We got a PhD, a guy on track for PhD, and the son of a wrestler. So we got a very very balanced speaking crew here. But
let's put feet to it today, though, Eric. What did we just do? The last 2 nights we spoke at Pastor Greg Howard's church. Mm-hmm. We did youth. Tell them about what happened with the young man.
Well, the kids have questions. This one young man, middle schooler, had tons of questions. The questions were amazing questions. I was blown away by the level of his questions. It was intellectual, academic questions from an 8th grade student.
What was the first one? Remember?
Oh my gosh, I don't.
You don't remember that? Because it was something really deep. You told me about it.
Yes, he did. He asked me of, he had been reading from Elon Musk.
That's right.
And he wanted to know, isn't it possible that our entire existence is just a simulation? I mean, and it's entirely possible. And so he was just peppering me with all of these amazing questions. But you know what? He was supposed to leave early. And he called home and said, man, I don't want to leave. I want to stay later. And Mom gave him permission to stay later. Then after we finished, he said, hey, could you talk to my mom? His mom was coming to pick him up, and he got his mom to come out of the car and talk to us. So this kid who was going to leave, who was very apathetic at the beginning, when we started engaging his questions, he couldn't get enough of it. He couldn't.
And then you finished, and I came in, and immediately after that, he comes up to me and says, you're really making me think about Christianity. I'm Jewish. And then another young lady is like, what do I do? What do I need to do to work with you? And so today we followed up again. Eric and I did another Q&A session, and that young lady wrote another. There were like 4 questions on there, and the number one was, how can I work with you guys? How can I get involved? I want this. So I know you've experienced this, Bill. We are so surprised that younger generation are interested in this. I'm not. It's the parents who are surprised. Parents think their children want this watered-down mumbo-jumbo stuff, but I'm telling you right now, kids are sick of mamby-pamby. They want something that's straight, real, and honest.
In their world of social media and false faces of happiness and activities on social media, they're starving for truth. And when they are presented truth in a way that's presented in an authentic way from authentic people, they greatly appreciate that, and they respond to that. And that's why the song and dances of youth groups that I see are just aggravating, because the kids see through it. They realize you're just trying to attract numbers because your boss will be happy if you get these big numbers. But we need to hear the meaning of life, the purpose of life, and what they really need to hear is that when all their public school friends are hearing about evolution, that's not true.
And here's why.
By default, they think evolution is true. Mm-hmm. So they need somebody to come alongside and say, macroevolution there's no evidence whatsoever, no matter where you look. You can even hear quotes from evolutionary scientists that there's no evidence for macroevolution. And what I'm finding as I talk to graduates of our school that are in secular universities, that they're coming back and saying, Pastor Schott, they don't distinguish between microevolution and macroevolution. They teach microevolution and then mock Christians for not believing in it.
Right.
We believe in microevolution. There's no question microevolution is true. What we don't believe in is macroevolution, the change in species over millions of years where they become entirely new kinds of animals. And that's where there is no evidence for. And man, do the kids get thankful when you can show them the biology and the science behind it, that they have the truth on their side.
Yeah, and so I'll share something personal about Bill. I shared a classroom with him for a couple of years, and the kids were lining up in between classes. They would come back from college on Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, get early for summer, and I saw they were literally waiting in line in the hallway to come see him and tell him these things. And it's a cool thing because he talks straight to them, and if they're talking about a social issue, something that happened, something personal, he's on it like white on rice, and so he's ready to go with that. So before we start the debunked story, we're going to take a break here in about 10 minutes. But I want to talk about First Priority for a second. First Priority is a local ministry right here. They're almost right across the street, or they're right down the street on Federal Highway. They're in the same property as the Stacy Foundation. And First Priority, run by Chris Lane, that's the Christian clubs in the secular high schools. And I got a brochure from him last time we were over there, and it says the largest mission field in Florida, 500,000 kids are in the schools, in the secular schools here. And just like Pastor Bill just said, they're getting hammered with evolution. Now, Juan, you taught at a Christian school. I mean, you're going to see, now, Christian school, but, you know, the secular school, obviously, the stat they give is 90% of kids at a secular school aren't Christians. And by the way, when you talk about the remaining 10%, I've talked to the Christian kids there, and they're like, well, out of those 10%, really only about 2% are really following after Jesus Christ. They're walking with God. The rest, they call themselves Christians, but by their behavior and their activity, you would never know it. So, Juan, you tell me. Actually, I want to hear from both you guys. If you could tell us, what do you see as from this is this Bill teaches at the largest Christian school I think in America. Is that correct? Or Florida for certain.
Certainly on the eastern seaboard.
Eastern seaboard, and then Juan taught at a Spanish. Was it a Spanish American church or
No. Florida Christian School is one of the largest in Florida as well.
Okay, so what do you see from students as from a Christian school now, right? Christian school that I know a lot of parents are dropping them off. They're more or less say, hey, some say, hey, we want to partner with you. We're doing it ourselves. We're the primary disciples of our kids, but we want to partner with you on this. And other kids, other parents we know, they drop them off and say, hey, disciple my kids. Do what you guys do. What do you see?
The experience is here's the sad story. The sad story is that Christian school students are not immune to walking away from their faith. It's a battle for every young person. But imagine growing up in a public school. I'm a public school student. I went all through elementary, middle, and high school public schools. I was fortunate enough to know the gospel from a very young age, grew up in a good Christian home, had a solid teaching church. So my faith was not in any danger at any point. But I see these public school kids. We do ministry in public schools. I go into public high schools in our area, in our church's area, and it's horrible. It's horrible in the sense that they struggle to find a teacher that will sponsor them because none of the teachers want to sponsor them. And without a teacher sponsoring them, they can't gather in any kind of club or Bible study or anything. And once they do get a teacher that sponsors them, the teacher's time is very limited. Most of the time, they're not really invested in it. And so very little promotion. You get there to talk, and the kids are running down the hall trying to find their friends to get somebody to come in and listen to you. So you'll get in there in a school with 3,500 students, and you'll have 7 kids that show up to their to the Bible club after school, because nobody's pushing it. Nobody. And I'm not saying this happens everywhere. I'm telling you this is my experience at 2 of the local high schools that we try to work with, and so it's we got to reach them somehow, and I think social media is going to be the way to get into them, because getting into the schools is very difficult.
Carl, Christian camps, you do quite a number of those, and obviously you've got kids who've walked away from their faith. I mean, there's kids who are there and they've got doubts. They're kind of there and they're almost like biding their time in a sense until college or whatever just comes after high school. What do you see as far as the kids? Why are they walking? The kids who are walking away? Why are they walking away?
The things we've talked about, they're not walking away. They were never in. Yes, they went to a church or they went to a social setting, but they didn't own it. They never had their own faith, and that's the major difference. They don't know truly what Christianity is about. They've worn a T-shirt. They've gone to a summer camp or something like that. But to really get in and study their faith and have answers for why they believe what they say they believe, that's what's lacking from what I'm seeing. I'll give you one story. First name Brittany. She heard me speak at a camp. I told the kids, I said, 6 to 8 months from now, half of you are going to be gone if it follows the statistics that I see. This young lady, 6 months later, I get a letter from her. I've still got it on my computer. She's gone to Auburn University. She says, I was raised in the Christian home. I went to church, Baptist church, raised in the church. And here I am 6 months at Auburn University. You told me I wouldn't have an answer. I didn't believe you. I'm ready to chuck everything. The people here all have answers for why they believe what they say they believe, but I don't. I can regurgitate what I heard somebody else say, but I don't know why I believe what I say I believe. What do I do? And so I spent like a month and a half with her, sending her materials and such like this, and then she cuts me off, and I don't know where she is today. My heart breaks over those. That's just one story. I can give you a bunch. And almost every one of them are going to tie back into the fact they don't know what they believe. So they get off. They try to ride a mom and daddy's coattail, grandpa and grandpa's coattails, and it won't work.
So now let's backtrack and fast forward. Let's talk about Carl Kirby working in ministry, wants to reach out to these kids, wants to talk at their level, wants to get their attention, wants to speak their language. Right? I speak at the language, man. So we want to talk to them. You come up with this idea, Debunked, that God gives you. Tell us about that, how that happened.
Well, that was crazy because I'd been trying to write some scripts to do some videos. I saw the power of video. I'm ADD to the max, so visual is I'm just visual. And so I'm writing scripts, can't get anything. Wrote some scripts for parodies of Mac PC parodies. You know, back in the day, Mac and PC, hey, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, yada, yada. And so I thought, man, it'd be good to really do, I'm a creationist, and I'm an evolutionist. And so I wrote some scripts, and the ministry that I was with, they didn't like them. It didn't go anywhere. But a buddy of mine sent me a link, and he didn't know I'd written these scripts. He sent me this link and said, you got to watch this video, and it's a Mac PC parody of Creation Evolution. And it was awesome. We've actually got them, if you go to our YouTube channel, go to YouTube and subscribe to Reasons for Hope, our YouTube channel. They're up there. There's 3 of them that are on there, and they're free. You can watch them up there. But I watched it, and I found out who produced them, and I wrote, and I said, man, I just watched this. I am a fan. This is awesome. And the guy responds back to me and says, Carl, I'm on y'all's mailing list. I'm a fan. I'm like, no way. And so I was actually going to California to speak in Porterville, and he's from Aliso Viejo area. And I said, man, come on up. Bring your family up. I want to meet you. I want to talk, and just let's talk. So he came up to Porterville. He watched me speak. I think I spoke 8 times over the 2 days that I was there. And over meals, we were just sitting and talking and brainstorming. And I said to him, his name's Bub, and we really wanted to have Bub on here tonight, and it just didn't work out. But I said, Bub, here's what I want, man. This younger generation just flat thinks different. We need to come after them straightforward. Dirty Jobs meets Mythbusters on steroids with a Ford F-150 look and feel. And that's how Debunked was born. And then it was just, we got the first one made, and the ministry that I was with hated it. They hated it. Oh, they did the research. They had teenagers watch it, and the teenagers hated it. And I'm going to be blunt with you, dude. I was broken. I was like, this thing, it works. But I got shot down, man. Well, it was probably about 6 months later. I was no longer working at that ministry, and it was like, oh, they rejected Debunked. I had to create another series for him. Bub and I did another thing for him. And it was like, oh, they rejected Debunked. We own it. So when we started Reasons for Hope, one of the first things that we did was create a series of the Debunked videos. And it's been going from there, man.
How many videos did you do out of the starting gate?
Out of the starting gate, we had 6.
And then, but you didn't. You had them on or DVDs at the time, and you were selling them and stuff. But someone puts them on YouTube. Oh, and they're starting to get how many hits are they getting views?
Oh my goodness! The original one with you couldn't fit all the animals on the boat, that had over 2 million views on it when we finally lost the channel.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're floating out there. People and all kind of people are copying and putting on. You can see them on YouTube. Bill,
and that was just ours. 2 million copies was just ours. That's not counting the other people that had, and there were bunches of people that had put them out. So,
right. So they're getting tons of views. Bill, would you turn around real quick? I want to read the back of your shirt, and I like this because we have this with us. So Debunked. Here's a description. Carl, why don't you read that?
Well, this is Bob, brother, and I can't do it as good as him. He says, unapologetic apologetics fired at breakneck speed, salted with a little kick, peppered with a bit of fun, mixed together for your love. With love for your viewing and educational pleasure.
You got that, folks?
When Bub does it, brother, he rocks it, man. He's able to kick it out.
So, so if you go to YouTube and you type in Debunked, and you just type in Debunked Carl Kirby, you'll get the videos, or you can just go to reasonsrforh.com. That's the letter R, F-O-R-H.com. And if you go to the Debunked tab on that page, you can go scroll to the bottom and see all the videos. And we'll go over a couple of titles on those, but
or even Get Debunked. Go to getdebunked.com. That's that'll take you straight to the Debunked bus and the whole works and all that sort of a thing.
Yeah. So we actually have you go to Get Debunked, and there's we're gonna go to a commercial break in about 2 minutes, but we're gonna roll out other tentacles, as we call them, to the ministry, the whole Debunked plan program and the world tour.
Well, Eric, I think also let folks know, man, guys, if you want to see those videos yourself, you can get them right on your own smartphone. Take your smartphone out now. We're not in church; it's okay. And if you're in church, it's okay. Just tell your pastor I said it's okay, and just text the message. Stay bold. It can be 2 words or it can be 1. Stay bold, B-O-L-D, to 51555, and you're going to get a link directly to all of the Debunked videos. And in the future, March 30th, we're releasing the one that we weren't supposed to, but I did. Debuted today. Billy wasn't real happy with me, but I had to show it to people. The question came up about suffering. How can there be God with all this suffering? So we showed it today, dude. People Loved it.
Bill,
Loved it.
For a secret, he's the wrong guy to have the secret, man, because he keeps letting the secret out.
Yeah, I'm not too sure how many more letters we have to add to ADD, but pretty much if I think it's on his Instagram. I don't know how it works.
So we'll so anyway, you text Stay Bold to 51555. And you'll be connected with us. You'll get the videos as they come out. You'll see the videos we have. You get the videos as they come out. We're on track right now. We're kind of got the machinery rolling. Like you put out 6 right when you started 9 years ago. Yeah. And now we've put out how many since we started the machinery up again?
We're up to 5, and then it'll be 6 again this month March 30th when we release Suffering. Then April's going to be No Evidence for Resurrection.
Yeah, right before Easter.
And we're working on May's right now, working on the script.
Yeah, so hopefully, if the model for this, if you've been to these videos are 3 to 5 minutes long. They're very fast paced. And how do you say it, Carl? They're not for the mature people in the audience.
I tell folks, the mature audience, you better put your seatbelts on because we're going after your children and your grandchildren, and they just think different. I told you, 2.2 second attention span.
All right, so we're going to go to a break in about right about now. So we'll go to break now. We'll come back. We'll go over some of the titles, and we got some other stories. We're going to go over a few of these apologetic questions for you. So thank you for attending our first segment of Debunked. Get you on the backside.
Sometimes it just seems impossible to say a simple thing like no, to stand up for your principles happens to everyone I know. Hide and seek, good by day, bad by night. What you do in the secret place shall come out in the light. You won't be happy there. That's nowhere for you. Life has so much in store, so much more for you. One thing leads to another. Be it bad or be it good. One thing leads to another. It's a lifelong road ahead. So you feel you've been blessed in life, wondering how to repay. Stick your light way up on the hill, so others might find the way. One thing leads to another. Oh yeah. Be it bad or be it good. You're gonna reap what you sow. One thing leads to another. One thing. It's a lifelong
Okay, so we're back here, our first apologetic show with Carl Kirby, Pastor Juan Valdez, Pastor Bill Schott, Pastor Ron, and Bill Biotti, Eric Purtick here from Reasons for Hope Ministry, and we want to talk about now our debunked videos. Now, Carl put out 6 videos initially, and the first one was, how'd you fit all those animals on the ark?
Yeah.
Now, what you got to know about Carl is he comes from a creation ministry, and he is, in my opinion, one of the top 2, top 3 creation speakers in the world. He's not a scientist, he doesn't have a PhD, but he does know, he speaks the language of the regular person on the street. He's done his homework, he knows the science, and he really articulates that stuff well. So he tackled that one right out of the box. That was the first one. And
Wow.
is that because...
Remember, this is not just me. I'll tell you a story. I'm over in Hawaii, Molokai, Hawaii, middle of nowhere, speaking. A young man comes up to me, says, "You're the guy." I was like, "What do you mean?" "You're the guy, the debunked guy." I said, "Well, I am and I'm not." Bub is really the debunked guy. Bub and I teamed up. We co-produced, co-wrote, and that sort of a thing. But Bub is really the genius, and I got to give him the credit that he deserves. But this young man was so cool because he said to me, I was in college, University of Hawaii. My roommate was an atheist, and he was chewing me up and spitting me out every night. Questions. I'm having to go do research. He asked me one day, "How'd you fit all those animals on a boat?" He said, "So I got on the internet and I did some research, and the first thing that came up was the debunked. Couldn't fit all the animals on the boat." He said, "I took it to him and I said, 'Hey, you asked me that question last night? Yeah, here you go. Watch this.'" He watched it and he said, "Carl," he looked at it. He handed me the device back, and he goes, "Huh," and walked off. He said he never did that with anything else that I ever did. Anytime I answered his question, he'd always challenge me even more. But that's the one thing that just shut him down completely. So, these things are written. Bub is the main genius on it. I got to give him most of the credit.
Bub is a very uniquely talented individual. The guy has production skills, apologetic skills. He knows his Bible and just really creative. He's a Hollywood man with the Jesus heart. So it's a pretty cool operation he's got going on there. So the first titles you had were all those animals couldn't fit in the ark.
Yep.
How can you have real hope without Christ?
Yep.
And so these are all, again, in 3 to 5 minutes. You look them on the website. God didn't mean what he said.
Right.
The Bible is full of errors and contradictions. Anyone ever heard that one? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
All hands go up here, right? There's no evidence for God.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorites, I love this one. You never have to speak about, as a Christian, this is really the Christian apologetics video.
Yeah.
As a Christian, you never have to speak about your faith. And
No, you just have to live a good life, man. Everybody will figure it out if you live a good life.
If you're a Christian and you have never seen this one, you got to tune into this one. This is the one where St. Francis of Assisi says, it's reported, he said that share the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words.
Right.
And I'll kick this one off because I heard a story where Billy Graham was catching a ride to the airport with some missionaries, and they were all piled in a station, the 1970 station wagon, and he heard that, and he says it. And this young missionary girl, she's 17, Billy Graham says, "Hey, when necessary, use words." And a young girl goes, "That's not true." She's correcting Billy Graham in front of the driver, all her friends, and the missionaries on the trip, and they're all like, "Oh my gosh, how are you gonna get this one?" And she says, God promises He's gonna bless His word. He never promises to bless our lives like that. And so it's a neat, the dichotomy right there is like, yes, we earn the right to be heard. You live the Christian life, and that's how you'll earn an opportunity to be heard. But then you got to speak the gospel. You got to share the words. You got to share the words, as Pastor Bill said, the words of Jesus. That's where the power is.
That's debunked in a nutshell, and it's because it's interesting. We live in a world that loves to throw these little sound bites out. I drove by a church just 2 days ago. Your life is like an echo. You will get back what you throw out. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Tell that to Jesus. Man died on a cross, and what did he do? He came, he loved, and he spoke. He loved on folks, and he got what he gave back. He gave out. I'm sorry, he didn't, and that's not what the Scripture teaches.
He loves us. Let's get him. Okay, so the new titles that we have out now, I can earn my salvation. Obviously, every other religion worldview in the world, they go by do more good than bad, and that's how you get to heaven. And it's literally what it is. Christianity is the only one it's by faith. All consensual sex is morally okay. There is no truth. And boy, if you watch the news these days, man, I've never seen a whirlwind. What do you think, Juan? You've been around, you got some gray hairs. Have you ever seen this culture that we're in now?
I have never seen anything like it.
It's amazing. It's like how do you and then it's almost like you give up. You're like, well, I don't know the truth because they're saying one thing, these guys are saying the other. Someone's obviously lying. It's big, it's bad, it's ugly, and I really don't know which one it is. It could be. It looks like it's this one, but there could be a good liar.
And that brings us full circle. The kids pick that up too. They want a straight answer. Everybody puts a spin on everything. And when you get them a debunked video where you just shoot straight into the topic with no spin, nothing, just straight facts and truth, man, that resounds with them because they don't hear that anywhere.
Bill, you see this and again, I love it because you and Juan in the classroom and in your classroom, I know that you get the most attention when you're talking straight with the kids and they're not just here. If you go by the curriculum, they're like, you're losing them. I'm in there, I'm watching, man. They're doodling, they're falling asleep, they're trying to get in their phones. And now you're talking straight with them about a real subject. Could be like, say, dating and sex. All of a sudden, what happens? Yeah,
I think they're just inundated with, as Juan was saying, they're inundated with people with agendas, people with biases, and things like that. And they see church people as people that just want to fill their sanctuaries up or their youth groups up, and they just want to hear from somebody that has no agenda. I mean, sometimes I got to give my own resume to them for credibility purposes. I'll say, guys, I'm not making much money, doing this gig with you guys, and I've been asked over the last 10 years, no less than 10 times, to start a church of my own and deal with adults and so forth. I'm about to get my doctorate degree. I mean, people that have been in school as long as I've been in school are usually making six figures. I'm not. And so I ask them, what's in it for me? What's in it? I'm doing this because you guys, I have a heart for you guys getting the straight answers that allow you to go to heaven one day. My goal is that you end up in heaven is the bottom line. And your choices have consequences to them. They're not idle. They don't sit in a vacuum. The choices you make are going to play out over your life in many different ways. So, just let them know that I'm not on commission. I don't get more money the more of you that confess Jesus Christ. I don't get paid that way. So the reason why I'm here is because truth is important. I love and I value truth. And I tell them I'll be a Muslim, a Jew, or an atheist if that's where the truth lies. But what I found is the best answer for all the evidence is Christianity. And therefore, if I want to be authentic and I want to be real, I have to be Christian. It's the only one that allows me to be without contradiction. It's the only worldview that allows me to not have to compromise on my views ever. Okay, so Carl, let's talk about the word apologia real quick. And this is I'm going to read from 1 Peter 3:15. And this is kind of the key verse that most ministries like ours use as their foundational verse. But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that's in you with meekness and fear. Tell us about the word apologia in the Greek and apologetics. I guess it's kind of like Bill was telling us earlier that we can't be speaking Christianese. Let's tell them what apologetics is instead of assuming it.
I'd tell everybody to go through that verse word by word because each one is amazingly powerful. Sanctify, set apart, set aside. This is serious business. This isn't just a suggestion. This is something that we are required to do. But the whole word apologetics, man, I'm a simple guy. I grew up around guys with one name, Crusher, Bruiser, Mauler, Assassin. Dude, I'm not going to get deep on you. I'm just going to tell you what it means is be able to give an answer why you believe what you say you believe. It's as simple as that. But that's what God is calling us to be able to do. It's a logical, rational explanation as to why you believe what you say you believe, and that's what it is.
Juan, and obviously Peter here, he's talking just to a couple intellectuals in the church. Is that correct?
Absolutely not. Peter didn't hang out among the intellectuals. He was a rough man, but this is for the church. This is the Holy Spirit speaking to the church. This is a commandment. This is not a suggestion. This is the Holy Spirit telling the church, hey, when somebody asks you a question, are you going to be ready to answer or what?
Wouldn't it be amazing, and we talk about people who are believers, and you run across people in all walks of life in different places, and are you a believer? Bill and I, we met some kids on spring break yesterday, or a couple days ago, right in Fort Lauderdale Beach, and one was a Catholic girl, and she was sharing and what she believes and how she shares her faith, and her friend that she was hanging with was just, every third word was a creative, part of language, and you're like, okay, so they're not really walking with this, but they claim so they're someplace between 0 and 100% about their belief how they're walking in Christ. Now, according to that, like when we're talking to folks like that, you think to yourself, wow, I wonder if everyone in the church took seriously the mandate to be ready with the defense for a reason for the hope that's in you. I wonder what the church would look like if everybody tithed. I wonder what the church should look like if everybody was, they were using their hands and feet to serve. They were being the hands and feet of Christ and serving and those who walk like that. So, Bill, what do you think? What was your kind of, just from the walking through Fort Lauderdale Beach on spring break the other day, what was your feel about that?
Yeah, my feel was there was a lot of colorful activity happening, and not all the colors were necessarily covered up. And so you see the world at its most open, sinful state of flesh, me and mine. And of course, many of us have been there, maybe before or even during Christ. We all fall, we all have issues. But man, it was so interesting talking to a young lady who said, yes, I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic. And then her other 3 friends said the same thing. And then in the next 20 minutes, we heard and saw many things that weren't exactly the fruit of the Spirit. And so the enemy comes to deceive. This young lady says, yeah, I'm 18 years old. And I go to church and I actually teach kids. I've been teaching kids in the church for 8 years. And I'm thinking, the math on that doesn't seem to add up that you've been teaching. But the point was, in her mind and her heart, she kind of went down the road of more good than bad. And of course, we know that objection. But yeah, I was that kid in high school. I know Carl was that kid. And, at the end of the day, when we share these reasons for the hope, we can be a know-it-all. But that's not the goal. The goal is to love, to remember where we were, and to remember who saved us, because there's got to be grace within this world. And in the sense of apologetics, we begin to know the answers, and sometimes we want to overstep our boundaries of sharing that with love. And we've got to make sure that it is truth, but indeed it has a hug that wraps around that truth, because that truth sometimes can be so real.
Yeah.
It may drive someone further away.
So Carl and Juan, both you guys travel and speak all around the world. Juan is in South America like gangbusters. He's there like every time we turn around. He's speaking at churches down there and in different places. Even he's got a government voice now down there, which is pretty neat. But you hear the other apologists out there. You hear speakers. You run across guys. You hear things on there. I know apologists who did not deliver. And when we see in 1 Peter, he says, do this with meekness and fear, and we can translate. Most of us translate as to gentleness and respect. Do you? And I remember I was listening to. I think Josh McDowell was telling the story where he was at a university when he was young, and there was a debate going on between a Christian and non-Christian, and the Christian, in his estimation, when he was kind of in his valley of decision, was killing this guy, the atheist, as far as the debate goes. And as they're walking out, he was all smiling, happy, going, "Man, that was great. We really whipped up on them." And you heard the girls in front of them as they're walking out of the cafeteria at this university saying, "Hey, who do you think won?" "Oh, I think that Christian guy won." "Yeah, but I don't like him." And so, just like you said, the delivery. When you guys speak to that, as far as the delivery, because it can be like that. You can become the Bible answer man, and I'm right, and you're winning the battle, but you're losing that war, man.
Am I the only one that sees the irony in Peter? Speaking of gentleness and respect, when he's the one that pulled the machete and cut a guy's ear off. I mean, but that was a before and after moment. The Peter we hear in this verse is a Peter that has matured and said, you know what, that doesn't solve anything. I didn't realize it in the garden when I pulled my machete, but man, I realize it now that doesn't solve anything. We need to be gentle. We need to be respectful. We need to understand that we need to be winsome and persuasive. We're not trying to win arguments. We're trying to win people to Christ. We're trying to persuade people. Winning an argument, maybe making a few points, dropping the mic and embarrassing somebody. That's not what this is about. Absolutely not. And I've seen it happen. I've seen people that are very witty and very sharp and very quick. And they'll just make somebody, an atheist or a skeptic, look really bad. Well, how close did you draw him to Christ by doing that? You got him now hating not only God and Christianity, you got him hating Christians now because they embarrass him.
Yeah.
So I'll give you my story. You said you made an interesting statement. You said we're not the Bible answer man. I go all the way back to Walter Martin. I got saved in Salt Lake City, Utah, of all places. Walter Martin came to Salt Lake City, spoke at a high school right across the street from our church. I took a friend to go watch that. Walter Martin and Ed Decker were in there, and they were debating, is Mormonism Christian? And it was very interesting. They had the open mic, and people were coming up and asking questions, and they were shredding them, man. I mean, they were just shredding them. I walked out. 30 minutes into the talk, I walked out. I said, man, I don't want anything like that. They're Christian. I don't doubt their salvation in the least. But the way that they handled it, I was not into it. And I was listening one night on the radio, and another apologist, people were calling in, and they were mocking. And an elderly lady called in, and she had that sweet, gentle voice, your grandmother, and you can tell that she's on the verge of tears, and she said, my children are this, they've done this, all these good. Look, you're not going to outgood Mormons for the most part, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to outgood them. I lived there for 8 years, I think it was. I can't even remember. It was a long time, but man, they're good folks, morals.
Mm-hmm.
And this lady says to him, and if you're Christianity, I want nothing to do with it. That had a big impact on me. So, yes, I've had my stages where you get fired up and the hair goes up on the back of your neck, but I've learned when that happens, you better go home. You're not operating in the spirit anymore. You're in the flesh and you're no good. We're to love people as Christ loved them, enough to die for them, and share the truth with them. Share the truth with them. No backing down, no pulling punches. But Christ died for folks, man, and we should love them enough to speak the truth in love.
You had a gentleman in England that gave you a real hard time.
Oh, yeah, that was so funny. This guy was all over me, man. He was boom, 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 boom. And I sit down and we have a talk. And it was, by the time we got done, he wrote something on a blog. And I didn't know this until later. He said, I went and saw Carl Kirby tonight. And he wrote this. He's like, he's actually a pretty nice guy. I disagree with him, but he's actually a pretty nice guy. So I had death threats once. They actually had to send security out with me to this place in Cicero, Indiana. This guy was writing some stuff up, so security comes out. I guess I met him because he wrote later after I left. He said, I went and I listened to this guy tonight, and he's not what I expected. So I just think, again, this isn't about me. This is about just being obedient to the Lord Jesus Christ. God blesses obedience, and when we speak the truth and we do it with love and we have a heart that genuinely cares, I don't take any pride in the fact that somebody's going to hell. It's not like, oh, good, I have less competition. This person didn't make it, so I'm in. No, God died for every one of us, man. So I just think if we have that heart of love, that it's going to come through.
Bill, again, you're with kids, and you see some, even in the Christian school, you see troubled kids, and the whatever they're doing, it's the tattoos, the e-cigarettes, and the smoke. Who knows what they're doing? But as far as you can tell, a lot of things. And you see that they're rebellious in their attitude and their tone, but you also realize that there's pain behind there. There's bad home life or whatever it is. And so, how do you do you ever lose patience with one of these guys and say, you're wrong and the Bible's right and you're gonna, how do you deal with that? As far as there's a line someplace like when I went to a Richard Dawkins thing, and I was with some top apologists there, and he was like, he was so upset at because Richard Dawkins obviously leading tens of thousands, millions of people astray, right? So there's a point where you don't cast your pearls to swine, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to focus on the people I can focus on, but for the hurting people, the disagreeable, the ugly, the ones, and how do you cut through that and be that loving deliverer of truth and love?
Well, I don't have anything written down that I follow or anything like that, but it's what Carl said. The reason why I've been teaching this age group for the last 23 years is I just find myself caring about them, and I agree with everything that's been said tonight that this is the time to catch them. I know what they're heading for in the university. I know the blatant attacks on Christianity that are happening in the university, and I'm trying to prepare them for that. And my classes are directly designed to take the very things I've heard the secular university professor saying to their students and giving them an answer for that, including I asked them to say to their professor, in fact, there's one at Nova Southeastern. I'm very tempted to name them, but Carl mentioned love and all that, so I won't. But there's a biology professor there at Nova Southeastern who he walked in the class and he said, hey, I just walked through the student parking lot and I saw a Jesus fish on the back of a car. Is that any of your cars here? And my daughter's best friend, it was her car, and she raised her hand, and this was a psychology class. And he said, listen, if you're going to be a psychologist, you got to get that Christian garbage out of your head right now. And she started weeping, and she called my daughter weeping about this. So my daughter, of course, told me, and I said, well, sometimes I talk about psychological things in my classroom, and would he be willing to come in as an expert in psychology and share in my classroom if he agrees that if he wants to bring up Christianity, he'll bring me in and we'll talk about Christianity in front of his students. So she brought that up, and he said, no, we don't do that, here, type of thing. But I went and told my boss, who's running CCA right now, and he's given me kind of this free invitation that if I keep offering myself to come into these university classrooms, that if anybody ever takes me up on it, that he'll give me the paid day off just to go and talk Christianity in these universities. So, I think what my students need to know, first of all, is not that I'm just saying I have answers. It's saying I do care about the things that you brought up, Eric. I care that your home life's not working out for you. I care what you heard from your parents and the messages that you've been receiving. I care that you go home into a neighborhood where every one of the kids there is doing drugs, and you've either given in and you've joined them, or you're doing your best to not, or wherever situation you're in, we can talk, because if they see that you care that way, they'll open up and talk to you.
Juan.
The hostility is incredible. I mean, I could give you names as well of professors at Miami-Dade College, at FIU, at the University of Miami. There was one gentleman at Miami-Dade College who's ranked one of the most popular professors on campus in Rate My Professor. He does lectures every year for the whole campus that are incredibly hostile to the faith. One recent lecture was The Evil Jesus. And he bashes and bashes. So I challenged him to a debate. And he says, no, I don't have time for that. He responded to the email. I'm researching, I'm writing. I don't have time to prepare for debate right now. And not a month later, he had a debate on campus with one of his students. So are you serious? You have a PhD in your field of philosophy, and you are okay with debating a freshman student in the college? I mean, but you don't have time to debate somebody who's at least at your academic level? And that shows you there's an agenda. There's an agenda, and the enemy doesn't fight fair. That we've known that. Carl has said that all the time, and I believe it. The enemy doesn't fight fair. But these kids are up against massive attacks.
So when we see the movie God Is Not Dead, you just pulled a scene right out of there, basically.
It's a fact. It happens. It happens. If you see that movie, I mean, putting aside whatever you feel about acting or the plot, at the end of the movie, they scroll case after case after case of court cases that have actually been filed, to try to defend students who have been just attacked by their professors.
Well, it's the other side too, Carl. You this weekend you mentioned the movie Expelled. It happens to the professors who are Christians. If they want to teach intelligent design, bring actual science in the classroom, that's not allowed.
Well, let's bring it home. We're here in Florida. I spoke at Boca, at the Calvary Chapel in Boca.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke to the youth group, and then what happens? The youth come up to me afterwards. Florida Atlantic University, psychology professor, day one, hands out index cards, write Jesus on it, stand up, put it on the ground, step on it. The rest of this class we're going to spend destroying one of the greatest myths that's ever been perpetuated on this planet. English professor comes around one day, shut your books, sits on the front of the desk, folds his arm. I'm rich. I don't need this job. I got a nice car. I got a nice house. The only reason I'm here is to destroy Christianity. You don't need to go to a movie. It's here. It's in your community. It's in my community. It's everywhere. You mentioned Expelled. Juan got to debate Hector Avalos, one of the guys that was in Expelled. He got to debate him. And guys, it is at the academic level as well. And so bringing it back to the youth, because we have to wrap this thing up, these youth are going off to a place where they are getting chewed up and spit out by these professors, and the culture has changed to now allow that. It didn't happen back when we were young, okay? But today it happens because they're bullies, and they can get away with it. And so that's why it's so important that what we're doing here, what Bill is doing with working with this younger generation, we've got to reach them. We've got to get them prepared so that we're not sending them as lambs to the slaughter, because that's actually what's happening right now. We're not sending them out as warriors. We're sending them out as lambs to the slaughter.
Juan, final comment?
Final comment. We were just in Mexico 10 days ago. We went to speak at a university where we had already gotten permission to speak. One of the speakers on our team was speaking there. And there's a community that came up and protested him from the LGBT and shut him down, shouted him down. He had to be taken off the campus with security because they were going to kill him. They don't want to hear it. They just don't want to hear it.
Bill, final words, 30 seconds.
No, I just encourage everybody to check out the Debunked videos, as I think this is definitely what our youth need to be seeing. I think they'll binge watch them even, and they'll get some of the answers that are really making them to struggle. So please check them out.
Yeah. So final thing is, we'll be on a weekly basis right after Pastor Ron and Pastor Bill have their show, 7 to 8 p.m. at right here, and we're going to have a Debunked bus tour. We have Bill Biotti, our administrator, our visionary for the ministry. He's taken a 1969 VW bus. You can see it on if you go to getdebunked.com. We've wired that thing up with a TV in the back. We play debunked videos. We give out swag. We head out. We're going to go do the East Coast tour this summer, and we're going to hit churches, Supreme Court, White House, Manhattan. See you there. Get Debunked. Out.
Hey, guys, thanks for being here tonight. This has been a great show, great first show. We look forward to many shows in the future right after In the Word Live here on Sunday nights from 7 to 8. If you'd like to watch this video again, it is on our video website, ccpblive.com. There'll be a library there. You can watch this video again. Maybe you heard something you didn't quite understand. You want to go back and look. It'll be there on the website. Thank you, guys. We look forward to seeing you again next week. You guys have a great week.
CCBB Live, you said?
Yeah.
All right, first show in the can. Ron?
CCPB.
Want to give us grades, tips, hints?
And it's not